2 days to climb the mountain. Then to pass the exam, he needs to walk more than 100 kilometers a day. Lin agreed with him, and therefore he cannot rely on himself alone. The system has only an auxiliary function. Therefore, Xiao can't help him directly. Lin replied that he just needed information. He can handle it alone. The assistant asked him what he was going to do. The protagonist asked Xiao to give him information about the sand ogres of the Shadow tribe. Sand ogres are iron rank monsters, more than 5 meters tall, high attack power but low intelligence. They live in groups in the Golden Flame Desert. Very rude and cruel monsters. Xiao asked him if they wanted out of the safe way to find the sand ogres. Lin replied that yes, he needed to collect the fragments to convert them into a summoning card. It's lucky that they live in groups. It will make hunting much easier. He wanted to use the ogre as a mount. Xiao started shouting at him that he was crazy from the heat because he thinks he can defeat an entire tribe of ogres, then immediately told him that he would not be alone. After that, we are shown the Shadow tribe, in which ogres live. The two-headed ogre was sitting in a tent and just enjoying life. Immediately a stone flew to his head and they saw Lin in front of them, who called them to him. He immediately grabbed his club and went after the protagonist. He hit the ground with all the force that Lin flew away from the impact. He immediately began to run away with the words that if he wanted to eat tender and juicy human flesh, he should follow him. The ogre immediately got angry and ran after him, trying to attack him. At that moment, the ogre tried to attack him, but immediately there was a cut at neck level. Lin's vampire landed, and the ogre's body fell to the ground. The protagonist told Bai that he was super strong. He knew he could rely on him. Xiao also said that for a vampire of the 3rd iron rank with the combat capability of the copper rank, a monster of the 1st iron rank will be One Tooth. He understood that Lin meant Bai when he said that he would not be alone. Lin put his hand on Bai and said that since he was so strong, he didn't have to risk his life. He will lure the monsters one by one and they will be able to just break in and kill them all. Then the system alert Prana received was displayed. Lin was surprised and immediately the wheel of life appeared behind him and it glowed. He did not understand what was happening to him. Xiao forgot to tell him that the monsters he summoned could help him with restoring the wheel of life. When a summoned monster kills another monster and gets its life force, half will go to him. And once the wheel of Bai's life is filled, all the prana is transferred to him. Initially, his wheel had only 3 sections, and now as many as 28. Now he will not die slowly. He even had the hope of breaking through to the iron stage. Lin was very happy and grabbed a sword to start hunting. At this time, the ogres were very bored and did not understand anything. Immediately, they were attacked by Lin and Bai. He shackled him, and the protagonist jumped on top of him and hit him with a sword with a special technique, and Bai chopped off another ogre's head with his bare hand. The other ogres began to worry and panic a lot. Immediately, the system informed him that he would receive a fragment of the Sand Ogre monster map, and Lin was very happy. While killing other ogres, he gained more and more card fragments and more vitality. After Xiao said that in order to break through to Iron Rank 152, the sections of his Wheel of Life must be filled with prana. He has already filled in the white sections, only the gray ones remain. If he uses additional life force, he will be able to activate and fill them too. Lin understood him. He knew that to activate one gray section, he would need as much prana as it takes for 10 years of life or about 10 white sections. In the past, he wouldn't have thought about such a thing, but now he finally had a chance. A little more and he will be able to break through. Lin grabbed his gun in his other hand and told Bai to kill them all. There were a lot of ogres, but they easily coped with them. Then he heard someone in the distance shouting. He realized that someone was still alive and Xiao noticed that he was in big trouble now. The monster screamed so much that even people who were just resting by the fire could hear it. One of the guys noticed that it was a sand ogre from the Shadow tribe. He was yelling like he went into berserk mode, but he should only be a copper rank. The other guy replied that the only ones who would dare to attack the Shadow tribe were giant saber-toothed wolves. He understood that there would be a bloodbath today. Han only hoped that Lin would be safe and Lin sneezed from being remembered. Then a hand appeared from the ground and Lin noticed that this monster was at least 10 meters tall. Xiao leaving replied that no one asked him to kill so many ordinary monsters. He himself caused the anger of this big guy and wished him good luck. It was the head of the Shadow tribe, a 3-headed ogre. He ran straight at Lin and Bai used fire, but nothing happened to him. Lin tried to shoot at him, but his skin was too thick. He immediately hit the ground, but Lin dodged. The protagonist continued to shoot. He knew that he had too much health and bad strength. If it continues like this, then he will definitely die. Therefore, he needs to attack weak points, the only way he can win. He tried to hit him, but Lin was able to dodge the blow. He ran and shot and shouted for Bai to attack him from behind. He shot him in the arm and Bai was behind him and attacked him, but he immediately turned around and almost grabbed Bai. Lin shouted for Bai to finish him off and the ogre looked at him and immediately rushed to the moon. He was shocked that the ogre decided to attack him. The ogre was already near him and shouted something loudly, and Lin was glad because he got caught. He reloaded the gun and started shooting right in the face, screaming for him to finally die. These were iron-grade explosive cartridges that easily pierced the ogre's hide. Zio immediately appeared, who grabbed Bio for his abilities. Lin began to get angry, because now he was emboldened, and in case of danger he ran away with his tail between his legs, to which the assistant replied that since he couldn't help, he just tried not to be a burden. The system then informed him that he had received a rare Sand Ogre monster card. He killed someone above him in rank, so the reward is a promotion card. Lin was glad that he was given a whole card at once. He did not think that a loser like him could be so lucky. Zio remarked that he was sorry that Bai had not struck the last blow, because he could have received a lot of prana. After taking the ogre's card and examining it, he realized that it was no wonder that Bai could not kill this ogre. Not only do they have the same rarity, but the ogre also has a cool passive skill that increases stats. Last time he absorbed Bai's skill Blood Art, and now he decided to choose Giant Endurance. Zio noticed that this is a good choice, because he needs a lot of strength to run away from everyone like the last coward. Lin immediately asked if he hadn't been slapped in the face for a long time. He knew that after exterminating the Shadow tribe, he had obtained enough map fragments. Now, he has 3 monsters to summon. Zio told him that no matter how many monster cards they collected, summoning more than 1 monster would still fail. And anyway, he wanted to talk about it when he got stronger. Afterward, Lin told Bai that he had done a good job, so he could rest now. The protagonist summoned an ogre and he was very big and strong, so he called him a tyrant. But Zio thought it was a bad name. Tyrant Shadow is an iron rank of 3 stars. Zio asked him if he should help him cross the desert. Lin replied that using a rare card for driving is a waste. He has another idea. He told the tyrant to return, because it was not for nothing that he and Bai had slaughtered the entire Shadow tribe before. He summoned an ordinary ogre and said he would go. Tyrant and Bai will be his trump cards, so he won't use them yet. Zio noticed that cowards always come up with clever plans. The ogre picked up Lin and started carrying him. Zio also said that if he has monster cards of the same type, then a rarer card can absorb the one that is worse and get random skill improvements. That is, he can feed this ogre so that the tyrant's skill improves. But he didn't want to rush, because he still had to catch up with the others, so for now he wanted to use him for protection and help in hunting, and after completing the exam he would feed him to the tyrant. Zio did not think that he would think everything through so far, and the ogre ran very fast, because he was not particularly happy that he would soon be eaten. Lin, sitting on top, understood that without the ogre he would not have been able to advance so far. But immediately there was an iron chain from below and the ogre turned over and they fell. Lin landed successfully and did not understand who dared to attack him. They immediately told him that he was too rude and asked him if he was afraid of death. Guys appeared in front of him. They recognized him because he is the guy who did not even reach the iron rank, but decided to pass the hunter exam. The ogre began to get very angry. Lin replied that it was him again, but it already seemed to him that it was some kind of monster. The blonde man began to get angry because he called him a monster. Zuo Qiu Kang asked what his name was and apologized that he had fallen into their trap. Kang introduced himself to him and introduced his cousin Zhu Jai. He asked him not to worry, because they have no evil intentions. Lin asked them to step aside, because he needed to go further. Lin understood that this kid is their leader, he speaks beautifully, but he sees through them. Kang added that the difficulty of this exam is serious, and although his monster is strong, he himself is very weak. Besides, this ogre can't climb the mountain. Therefore, he decided to offer him to unite, and when we reach the mountain, they will help him. Lin thanked him for the invitation, but he is more used to working alone and he does not like to work in a team. Immediately, he put his hand in front of him and Lin thought that he had finally decided to show his true face. Kang asked him to think it over carefully. Zhu started to get angry because they gave him a chance. He immediately told them that they didn't care about him. They only needed his ogre for fast movement, and if it wasn't for the monster, no one would even pay attention to him. He decided to teach him a lesson for insulting the noble family of GOQ. Lin asked them if they intended to retreat. He knew that such families have gold rank hunters, so the Federation recognizes them as a noble family. No wonder he's so arrogant. Kang said again that he wasn't forcing him, but the way he treated them annoyed him a little, so he wanted to teach him a lesson. Zhu said that freaks like him need to be hammered into their heads how to behave properly. They immediately rushed at him, but Lin easily dodged. They were shocked that he seemed to have disappeared. Zhu turned around and ran straight at Lin with the words that the tamer would die first. Immediately, the protagonist asked him if he had enough strength for this and called his vampire. He hit him and cut his stomach. Everyone immediately rushed to help their friend and was surprised that Lin had another monster in stock. He made the cancellation of Bai's summoning and summoned a huge tyrant monster from behind the people. They turned around and were surprised that he had summoned 3 monsters. The tyrant just threw 3 guys into the air with one blow. Zhu slowly came to his senses and called Lin names. Kang was perplexed that a person who had not reached the iron rank could summon 3 monsters. The tyrant was standing behind the protagonist, and Lin reminded them that they wanted to teach him a lesson. But now something happened and they abruptly changed their mind. Tyrant went on the attack, and Kang created a shield. He wanted Lin to calm down and talk to them. Kang understood that in order to damage an iron rank defensive weapon so easily, this monster must have a copper rank. Lin asked the tyrant to stop, because he was interested in what they would say. Kang admitted that they had made a mistake and apologized. Zhu told his brother not to be afraid, because if he killed them, he would be suspended from the exam. He will be blacklisted, and he will never be able to pass the exam again. And killing a member of a noble family is a serious crime in the Federation. Kang yelled at him to shut up. He told Lin that the Zuokyu family recognizes strong people. He is ready to make everyone apologize to him, compensate for losses, and become his friend. And also, he can take any piece of equipment from his inventory. But the protagonist did not need any compensation, but he only needed all the items from Zhu's inventory to cover the moral damage caused by his arrogance. From his words, Zhu was very surprised and shouted that the tame is useless without his monster, and added that he stopped looking down on them. He threw a shuriken at him, but the tyrant defended his master. Shurikens flew at him again, but Lin took out a pistol and beat them all off, and also hit Zhu's shoulder, which made Kang very scared. Zhu asked his brother to help him, but Kang turned away and said nothing. Lin started to approach him and said he was giving him 3 seconds to say the last words to him and pointed the gun at his face. Zhu believed that Lin would not dare to kill him. Otherwise he would lose his qualifications to become a hunter, but Lin admitted that he did not care, because he did not even have an iron rank, but he was able to summon very strong monsters, especially since he had 3 of them. Even if he doesn't become a hunter, any other organization will hire him. Zhu, scared and angry, only shouted his name, and Lin asked him if he thought that the association would let him go so easily. Even if he killed not only him, but also the young master, he would still have a chance to leave without anyone knowing anything. Zhu started screaming for him to stop and beg for mercy. Lin decided to pull the trigger and said goodbye to him, and Kang intervened. He said that Lin could ask for anything he wanted, but he asked him to spare him. He would do everything possible to please him. He has 4 pieces of iron equipment, and he will give him everything, as well as things from Zhu's inventory. He can take whatever he wants, but Kang asked him to spare him. Lin really wanted to pull the trigger, but this time he decided that it was worth treating his master with respect. Actually, killing him would be a lot of trouble, but these nobles are too annoying. But now the Zuokyu family will not touch him and will even be in debt. Then someone started shouting from behind to help him. He turned around and saw a guy in front of him. This body shape looked familiar to him. A moment later they lit a fire and sat around it. Han did not expect that he was a tame one. If he had not met him, he would have already been buried under the sand. Lin thought he went with the leading group and asked how he could have gone off course. At this time, the tyrant was looking at the meat and drooling. Khan said that when they were setting up a tent and preparing for the night, they were attacked by ogres, and because of this, everyone fled to wherever. He began to cut the meat and thanked him, because he is now his benefactor. He handed him a piece and asked him to try this armored boar that his team had caught. Lin also didn't think he could cook. The goal of Khan's whole life is to become a gourmet hunter, travel around the world in search of the best ingredients to create the tastiest dish. That's his goal. The meat of the armored boar is fat and juicy and will become even tastier if you cook it on the grill, and the meat of saber-toothed wolves is also simply amazing. There are different monsters in different areas, for which there are different ways of cooking. Lin understood that Han was a good person. He also understands cooking, so he thought it was useful to keep him around. But he is very noisy. After the meal, Lin climbed into his tent, and Han said that he had lost his tent, and he had it with him. He asked him to let him in, because he doesn't want him to sleep on the sand. But Lin is used to sleeping alone, so he won't be able to sleep if he's inside. Khan lay down by the fire and started talking about how he was just too fat and it was unpleasant for him to be near him. Lin noticed that the tyrant was not tired at all and therefore decided to leave him just in case to guard them. After that, Khan fell asleep and had a dream about delicious meat. Lin was also sleeping soundly, but immediately woke up and saw the shadow of the tyrant near the tent. He immediately jumped out of the tent and asked what had happened, but Khan was still asleep. He asked the tyrant what was wrong and where the danger was, who seemed to be furious. Lin realized that everything was very bad. The protagonist immediately began to lift Han, but his friend got up very slowly and thought it was morning. Lin shouted that they urgently needed to run away, but the sleepy Khan did not understand why, because his monster is very strong, so why should they run? Lin decided to show him himself, and it was a big flock of yin crows, and Han immediately realized that they were finished. The tyrant put 2 friends on his shoulders and ran away from the ravens. Khan shouted for someone to help them, because it's too early for him to die. Lin shouted to him that he should stop yelling, because he was only attracting them. Yin crows belong to the family of ghosts. and do not have a physical body, so they can pass through objects, which means there is nowhere to hide. Khan had seen the news about how a whole squad of hunters had been killed by them. The corpses didn't have any injuries, but their souls had been sucked out, so they looked like mummies. Even hunters of the golden rank prefer to avoid flocks of these crows. Immediately Khan fell off the tyrant, but he managed to catch him with his hand and he did not growl enough. Lin understood that they would be caught up sooner or later. The only chance to survive is to request help by pressing the button, but then they will be disqualified. And if he does not pass this exam, he will lose his system, which means he will lose everything. He can't just give up, even if he dies. But Lin didn't know what to do, and if there are any ways to survive it. Then we are shown the Area 7D121. The girl said that before many had given up, the current participants were so weak. If there aren't any talents among them, then everyone will laugh at her. Then the system window appeared and she was not very happy, because they did not even let her rest. She was surprised that Lin was moving at such a high speed and didn't understand how. She decided to teleport to the desert, because even a copper rank would not be able to move so fast. She assumed that one of the monsters had devoured the protagonist and the signal was coming from there. Then she saw the ogre. Lin, sitting on his shoulder, shouted for her to get them out of here faster. Immediately, he flew off the tyrant right at her, and the tyrant was already lying on the ground and his head teleported into her house. He realized that he would not be able to get through, so he decided to recall him. He apologized to her for being too slow, and the girl ordered him to get off her. Then she sat down on the sofa and she did not believe that before her appearance, they were chased by a flock of yin crows for half an hour. Lin agreed, because he would not have sent the request if it were not for these crows. The girl noticed that such a speed was abnormal for a 3-star ogre and assumed that he had mutated. And Lin agreed. He knew that the tyrant is a naturally mutated monster. When he received his card, it was already rare. He understood that since she understood everything, there was no point in hiding it. The girl agreed with him, and about the crows, she will report them to the top, so by morning they will have finished dealing with them, and Lin apologized for the inconvenience. Now he could only hope that he would not be disqualified and complete the mission as soon as possible. After all, yin crows are a serious reason. She said that after the crows were dealt with, she would send the 2 of them back and they would continue the exam. Lin understood that otherwise he would lose his system and his wheel of life would return to its original form, which means imminent death. Lin admitted that in fact, he did not use the button. The communicator was broken from the very beginning, and he had nothing to do with it. The girl noticed that he was smart. She told him to take Khan with him and find a place to stay for the night. When the situation with the yin crows is resolved, they will continue the exam. The protagonist realized that I wasn't disqualifying them and asked her about it. The girl asked him if he wanted to be expelled and pulling Khan out. He replied with a denial. He wished her a good rest. He would not bother her anymore and would close the door himself. She was sitting in front of the TV and was immediately very happy because she found a tamer with a mutated monster, and now no one will dare to say that she took weak beginners. Lin was as surprised as possible that such a huge flock of yin crows disappeared in just 1 minute. The girl explained that the people they sent were veterans. They are much stronger than he thinks, and now they should go and think about how to pass the exam and move to the iron rank. She warned him that if he sent a signal for help again, he would pay for all her hotel bills. The protagonist realized that this was another way to punish him, instead of taking away the right to qualify. Immediately, Khan approached him and asked what they were doing together while he was sleeping. But Lin told him to keep quiet, otherwise he would go on his own 2 feet, and Han apologized. He didn't know where they were. Lin replied that last night, while the tyrant was running away from the crows, they moved from Yun to the north for half an hour. Now they are not far from the northern part of the recreation area, about 60 kilometers from their camp. They missed the whole night, so they'll have to speed up. Lin summoned the tyrant and he carried them. Khan was very hot, as if he was being baked alive. Lin suggested that there should be a supply point nearby. They reached the house and Khan assumed that this was it. He wanted to go there and take a break. Lin understood that you need to be careful because there may be other participants. For them, they are the same enemies as monsters. When they went inside, Han immediately realized that this was indeed a supply point. Lin agreed, and since there was no one there, he agreed to rest. Khan opened the boxes and there were his favorite brand of chips. So he wanted to take some, but the protagonist told him to take only what he needed because they had to follow the rules. Immediately he noticed backpacks and used things. He realized that someone had been there before them. Khan understood that this point is the only one in the whole district, so it is not surprising that they are not the first. But for Lin, all this was strange, because all these things are not valuable, but they are needed. They wouldn't just leave them, so he realized that something had forced them to leave this place. Khan asked him not to scare him like that. He didn't see that there were any signs of a battle or a threat here. Immediately, the tyrant outside growled violently and Han did not understand what it was, and Lin shouted that it was time to run. A moment later, they were sitting on the tyrant while he was running away, and someone was chasing them underground. The protagonist realized that there was danger after all, and now she was chasing them, but Khan didn't even notice it. Something was approaching the tyrant very quickly, and Lin asked the ogre to be careful. Immediately, he turned around and hit the ground hard. A huge worm appeared from under the sand, which was gigantic in size. Lin and Han were incredibly surprised and scared. It was an infernal worm, a demonic monster. Even a tyrant couldn't handle it. Lin didn't understand why such a monster appeared on such a safe path. The protagonist opened fire on the worm, but for him it was nothing. He immediately twisted around, and Lin realized that he was too fast and that they could not escape. Khan was crying because he didn't want to die so early. Immediately Lin asked the tyrant not to move, and he was surprised. He looked at Han and asked him not to move either, while his friend was crying and screaming. The protagonist noticed that this monster has no eyes and ears. Lin asked a friend if it could be that he was tracking his goals with vibrations, but Han didn't know because he hadn't read the Book of Monsters. Immediately, the worm began to look for its victim in surprise, and Lin turned out to be right. If they do not move, he will lose them, but if everything continues like this, then they will not see the exam. Khan had an idea. He took a piece of meat out of his bag and decided to throw it to distract. Lin shouted that he told him not to move, and the worm noticed them. Immediately, Khan stumbled and fell down and landed in the sand. The worm began to approach him, and Khan asked for help. Lin shouted to the tyrant to save his friend faster. He immediately kicked the worm in the mouth. Lin shouted at him to get up and run away from here. The tyrant also began to run away, and Lin shouted at him to try to catch him, but the worm did not know who to chase first. Immediately, he crawled underground, and Han asked Lin to survive because he would not be able to repay him for everything. Immediately, the worm chased the ogre, and Lin asked the tyrant to run in the same direction, and he should throw him aside. He shouted that the time had come, and the ogre threw Lin far to the side. The guy landed successfully, and the ogre ran on. Lin asked the tyrant for forgiveness. After all, he will have to use it as bait. Immediately, the worm began to devour the ogre from below, but as a tame he would never give up his monster just like that. He summoned the tyrant again. He wanted to go and get their Kalabak, and the worm in perplexity did not understand where the ogre had gone. Lin shouted Han's name and didn't understand where he had gone, but he resigned himself and realized that he needed to move on, assuming that he could meet him near the mountain. On the way to the east, they had to face a lot of dangers. They killed white harpies and other white lizard-like monsters. The safe path proposed by the association turned out to be not so safe. Then he realized that it was too strange. He also called Bai to fight against a huge black wolf. But finally, they reached the goddess ridge. He told Bai that the size of the tyrant was not suitable for mountaineering. Therefore, only the two of them will climb, but Bea only kept silent. Later, Bai climbed first forward, and they tied each other with a rope so that Bai would save him in case of anything. Lin understood that if it wasn't for the giant's stamina, he definitely wouldn't have survived this. Immediately he stumbled and shouted Ba. Immediately Bai turned around and grabbed the rope. Lin was very scared. He already thought that he was finished. Then he put him on his back, and Lin was embarrassed. The protagonist wanted him to let him go. He said that he did not need to drag him on himself because he could climb himself. Besides, he still has a man's pride. After that, when it was night, Lin said it was late, so he set up camp to rest. They had some meat left, which Khan cooked. He wondered where he had disappeared. He didn't want his friend to die, because he still wanted to try his cooking. Immediately he drew attention to Bai why he wasn't eating, and the vampire jumped off the mountain, and in a moment he was already in place and holding a certain Fluffy who was crying. Lin recognized him as a snow beast, and the animal was trying to escape. The protagonist has heard that these are very cute and harmless creatures. They are rare, so their price is equivalent to copper equipment. Lin assumed that the animal had come here from afar because it was hungry or it just smelled meat. Lin decided to feed him. He was very nice. No wonder all the girls are delighted with him. He assured Bai that he was harmless, so he can not worry. But of course the animal ate a lot. Lin told him that since he was full, it was time for him to go home because he had no more food. But the animal clung to his leg, and Lin realized that he wanted to take him somewhere. Bea was already angry, and the animal agreed with Lin's words. The protagonist knew that they had nothing to do anyway, so he decided to go and see what was there. Then he jumped right into the ice, and Lin asked him to stop because he was hurt, but the animal passed through him. The guy was surprised when he passed. Lin started touching the wall, and even though it looked like a wall of ice, but it's just an illusion. There's something on the other side. He invited Bai to go with him and see what was there. When they entered a certain portal, he was very cold, as if he had plunged into a cold pool. Then a bright light began to shine in his face, and when he looked, he did not understand what kind of place it was. Lin then turned around, but Bai didn't enter there. The animal told him that he would not pass, because only people with permission can come here, and monsters do not belong here. Lin was surprised that he could speak. It's just that his voice doesn't match his appearance. Then the animal will transform. and he decided to show him the real form. He became a huge white Yeti with horns. Lin knew that Yetis were ice attribute monsters. They are even stronger than superior level monsters. If he wants to, he can easily kill him. Lin was scared and couldn't even say a word. The Yeti assured him that he wasn't going to hurt him. Lin was surprised that he knew what he was thinking. He explained to him that he had brought his son to ask for help. The protagonist was at a loss. He asked what he should help him with, and Yetu stretched out his hand and the harrier flew on it. He invited him to come with him, but first, he would tell him a story and therefore asked him to listen carefully. But Lin knew he had no choice. A long time ago, when he was still a child, he had a mistress. She was the kindest being in the whole world, and all his memories from that time are connected with her. Lin was surprised that the Yeti is someone's pet. He confirmed this, but noted that she was not human, but realized this only after he began to evolve. She loved people, loved to communicate with them, and often hid her identity to join them, and therefore, she often left this snowy mountain. Even though he was lonely, he could handle it as long as she was happy. Subsequently, she fell in love with a man, an ordinary mortal. She was ready to give everything for him, and from that day on, he never saw her again. Until one day, she came back. He was so happy that he rushed to her until he saw that she would soon be gone. When that mortal found out that she wasn't human, he gathered a group of hunters to kill her. During the battle, he was wounded and almost died, and in order to save her beloved, she tore out her own heart so that that person would survive, but she only had to wait for her death. Lin noticed that there was such a good beginning and such a sad end. He wanted to find out what happened after that. The Yeti listened to her last order, and then plunged her deep into this icy lake. Since then, this mountain has been trapped in ice. The protagonist asked what he needed from him, since his mistress had already died. She said that one day a chosen one will come here who will be able to melt this lake, and then she will come back to life, and the ice on the mountain will melt. Lin asked if Yeti meant that he was the chosen one, to which the giant replied with a denial, because there were 3 before him and all failed. Lin realized that he was just randomly bringing anyone who climbs this mountain, to which the Yeti replied that he chooses only people with a kind heart. Several thousand years have passed and he is only the 4th to enter here. Lin agreed and asked what the Yeti wanted him to do. He replied that he just needed to drop a drop of his blood. It doesn't matter if he succeeds or not, he will be able to leave. If he fails, then he will simply erase his memory of his stay here. Lin was surprised that everything was so simple and decided to try to do it. He bit his finger and bled into the lake. He hoped that he would help a girl who was betrayed by people. She dripped into the lake and Lin asked what was next, to which the Yeti replied that they would just wait and see. After 1 hour there was nothing. The guy realized that nothing had worked out and apologized. Immediately, the lake split and the Yeti said that it turned out because the lake began to melt. After a moment, all the plants began to come back to life. He was surprised and assumed that there were so many nutrients in his blood. The Yeti was glad that his mistress began to appear out of the water. She finally returned, and Lin was surprised by her beauty. She looked at the Yeti and said she hadn't seen him for a long time. She thanked him for keeping her safe all this time, to which the Yeti replied that it was his duty to protect her and therefore there was no need to thank her. She also thanked the Chosen One and asked him to call her Zuluo. Lin, a little embarrassed, also introduced himself to her. He decided to ask her if she was a monster or not, to which Luo replied that she was from the divine race. Lin remembered the monster that opened 3,000 eyes of the abyss 800 years ago. She understood that he was talking about a self-proclaimed god. He may be considered strong, but he is not of the divine race. He was given only a small part of the divine powers. Lin was still confused, and the girl added that the real power of the gods was beyond his comprehension. She wanted to demonstrate to him. She directed some rays at him and the harrier was scared. Immediately, he felt a certain feeling. His cracked wheel of life is now fully restored. The goddess said that his wheel of life had hindered him for a long time. As a reward, she healed him. He was surprised and realized what the power of the gods was. But that wasn't all. For her rescue, she decided to give him another reward. The system told him that a divine presence had been detected. There was an entry into the state of etheric perception. He was congratulated that his Great Desolation skill card had been upgraded to epic rank. Lin was as surprised as possible by this. He thought it was a huge gift, to which the goddess said that he was very unusual for a mere mortal. Lin he expected from the divine race. She sees through him. No wonder Zio Hai was afraid to stick his head out. Immediately, the Yeti picked him up and she told him to send this gentleman back, and also promised that they would try to help him in the future. Lin thanked them because he had already received a lot. The goddess said that after he left, they would also leave this place. Lin was wondering where they were going, to which the goddess replied that they were going back to their world. The protagonist realized that they would not be able to see each other again. The girl asked him to be careful on this mountain, because if he decides to stay here, they will meet a lot of monsters. Lin was surprised, because it's really strange. The hunter exam should be simpler, but he has already met so many dangerous monsters. The girl replied that she felt the aura of a monster that has reached the rank of superiority, and it looks like he has a skill that makes the surrounding monsters hunt for him, so he should hurry up and leave this mountain as soon as possible. Lin understood what was the matter. He waved to them and the girl hoped that they would see each other again. And Lin asked them to take care of themselves. He also hoped so. Then Lin passed through the barrier and felt a strong cold. He saw Bai, who had been waiting for him all night, and there was already snow on his head, so Lin apologized to him. He said that something had happened on the other side, but he decided to continue the journey anyway, because he was strong and ready to go further. Then they crawled up again and Lin said that after his wheel of life was restored, he became stronger. He was wondering how strong he would become after switching to the iron rank. They finally reached the top, and Lin thought he would make it to the end of the exam. Immediately, they heard the sound of birds and prepared for battle. He saw geese and was surprised that they live in snowy mountains. Lin said that maybe they look formidable, but they are so delicious, so he wanted to catch a couple, but immediately he noticed that something was wrong with them. The geese had teeth and a long tongue. They were not ordinary geese, but real monsters. Lin didn't know why they were so big and called Bai to run away. Then Bai saw the cave and wanted to get to it. He climbed up, and Lin shot them with pistols. He understood that there were too many of them, so they needed to hide somewhere, and Bai rushed straight to the cave and pulled the protagonist with him. He praised the vampire and wanted to wait until they left. He noticed that something was wrong with them, and then a big black raven appeared, which dispersed all the geese. He was just hunting them, and Lin understood that he was at the peak of the transition to the copper rank. Immediately he was glad, because he was afraid that these geese would not let them pass further, but they are safe with him. Immediately, the raven landed near them and looked at them very viciously, covered in blood. Lin got scared and the raven began to circle around and immediately hit the mountain. Lin didn't understand why she was attacking them, because they hadn't done anything. Bai got ready for battle and created fire. And the protagonist told him not to even think, because he is not equal to the copper rank. The guy took out a gun and opened fire with the words that he had almost passed the exam, so he should not interfere with him. The bullet hit the crow, but there was not even a scratch and Lin was very surprised. He was already thinking that now they really are finished. The raven was beating hard against the mountain. Lin told Bai that he had an idea, so he should wait for his signal. Immediately, when the raven almost made his way to them, Lin shouted that it was time and Bai got ready. He threw fire at him, and the protagonist rushed straight at the monster. He understood that if he had a super strong body, then he was not so invulnerable. He put the gun to his eye and immediately pulled the trigger and there was a loud shot in the raven's head. The dead carcass of the bird began to fall down and Lin said that only his last bullets were left for him. A system window immediately appeared. Lin knew that he had killed a monster that outnumbered him by several times, but he still wasn't given a promotion card. The system informed him that he had only received a fragment of the Black Raven monster map. The monster he killed was above the ranks, so a doubling card was obtained. Zio appeared and said that the promotion cards are given randomly. At that time, he was just lucky that 2 fell out at once. Lin understood that if he had more cards, he would easily raise the rank of Bai and Tyrant to legendary. Zio replied that the strength of the summoned monsters also depends on their master. If the host is too weak, then no matter what rank the monsters have, their strength will be limited. But Lin asked him to just shut up. His new card was so-so. And Zio added that if he found suitable monsters, he could use this card to get a bunch of fragments faster. His bad luck never ceased to amaze him. But Lin would like him to leave, because he's not in the mood to talk to him. Lin understood that a lot of time had passed, and that he had to hurry up and get to the top, otherwise he would be late. After that, Bai pulled Lin up to him and the protagonist said that after completing the exam, he needed to buy more bullets, especially armor-piercing ones. He saw that they had climbed quite high. A lot of obstacles took them too much time, but finally they reached the top, and right there behind them was someone who said that the weaklings should have given up from the very beginning. Lin asked him who he was. Neither Bai nor he sensed his presence. He asked them not to be surprised so much, because he is the same participant as him, and Lin said that he was pleased to meet him. He asked Lin if he had killed his Black Raven. The protagonist realized that he was also a tamer and asked why he attacked him. The guy replied that he let him go so that he could find food, and they were just unlucky, but he would not forgive him so easily and would remember his act. He summoned a huge eagle, and Lin thought that he wanted to attack him. Bai had already prepared for battle. He knew that this was a copper rank blood eagle and they were not in a very favorable position, so something had to be thought out. But the guy assured them that he wasn't going to take revenge right now and noticed that his vampire was fine. But he was still too weak for him, so he decided to talk to him when he got down from here. Lin was angry because he thought he was a relative of Sio Hai. Because he was just as arrogant, Lin wanted him to come back and fight him. Immediately he realized that he needed to figure out how to get down from this mountain as soon as possible. He took out the chains and swept himself with them. Lin understood that Bai's wings were not adapted for flight, but they could be used in a different way. He attached the chains to Bai's wings and began to glide down. He always wanted to try it and would never have thought that the dream would come true in another world. He understood why people always wanted to learn how to fly. It was very fascinating. Immediately they flew to the Area 7D-121 and Lin realized that his fun was coming to an end. When he landed, he praised Bai for his good work, and the girl did not think that he would arrive first. She congratulated him on passing the exam. A little later, he will be able to register as a hunter. Lin was surprised that he came first, and the girl asked him if he thought she was lying. Lin replied that he just met one kid who was very arrogant, and he also had a bloody eagle. She realized that he was talking about Bai Yan, and replied that he did not count. Lin thought that he was not a participant, and the girl answered him that he was a participant, just very different from everyone else. He's special, so he doesn't have to take the exam, but he insisted on passing it like everyone else, so he can immediately become a copper hunter. Lin was surprised that this guy would be a copper hunter. Then we were shown that he had 3,500,000 credits left. He was glad that he was able to sell the life crystals from Zhu Liu for more than 3 million. Finally, he began to consider himself rich. Then he remembered the words of the girl who said that after completing the exam, the registration of hunters would take some time, so he would have to stay here for a couple of days. Lin thought it was worth spending this time replenishing ammunition and collecting monsters. He went into a gun shop and the seller said that he did not sell bullets for the Dark Eagle. It is rare to meet the owners of the Dark Eagle at their place, so he does not order them, but he can try to go to Old Zhang. Even if he does not have them, it means that no one has them. Lin sighed and said that 7D-121 is much bigger than his area, but no one sells rare equipment, so he will have to find this Zhang. He went into a dark alley and spent a lot of time to find this shop. He thought her master must be quite unusual. He opened the doors and greeted the owner. Immediately grandfather interrupted him and told him to choose what he wanted, and then approached him and named the price. He noticed that there are equipment from iron to gold rank. The price is high, but there are also a lot of weapons from limited versions. He believed that this old man is clearly not so simple. Lin told the old man that he needed ordinary and armor-piercing bullets for the Dark Eagle 17. The old man asked how much he needed, and Lin replied that 3,000 bullets of ordinary and 300 armor-piercing bullets. The seller noticed that he was quite rich and decided to clarify that it was too many bullets and whether he was going to arrange a massacre, but Lin asked him not to joke like that. The old man put the boxes where the bullets were. The total amount is 165,000 credits. Lin agreed and asked if he had enough goods in stock. He replied that it was enough. If he had enough money, he could even get a relic. He thanked him and added that if he needed anything, he would definitely come to him. He did not think that he would meet such a person here. Immediately a certain sound rang, and the old man replied that it was an alarm alert. Most likely something had happened. Lin shouted that he had to go then and thanked the old man again. He went outside and there was already a crowd. The girl told everyone that the reserve hunter exam wasn't over yet. But in a situation like this, their hands are tied. A monster capable of controlling other monsters appeared in the Golden Desert. Because of it, many participants were trapped. They don't have enough people to go and help all the participants who requested help, so they need them to stay here for now. As soon as they deal with this problem, the ban on leaving will be lifted. Lin remembered that Zhu Liu had said that she felt a very strong monster, and as a result, as expected, something similar happened. The guy asked what they should do, whether they should be locked up. The girl looked at him very menacingly and said that these monsters are much stronger than they think. Wherever they go, it will be dangerous. They are trying to save them by leaving here. Otherwise, they will just become food for them. So if they want to die so badly, she can help them. She asked everyone who wanted to die first, but everyone was very scared and kept silent. Then she told everyone not to worry, because the association had sent an excellent one to deal with the monsters. When the main monster dies, everyone else will run away, and then this crisis will be over. But Lin understood that everything would not end so easily. Then Bai Yan appeared. He asked that if the excellent one failed, it would take too much time before the other one arrived, and then this area would suffer huge damage. He turned around and added that he wasn't going to sit here and wait. Lin was as surprised as possible, and the girl told everyone that they had dispersed and preferably waited at home until everything was over. By tomorrow the situation should be resolved, and then they would continue registration. The protagonist understood that even though he was annoying, he was saying reasonable things. Lin turned to the girl and she recognized him. He heard that the participants were trapped. He asked her if she remembered the fat man who was with him. The girl replied that he decided to leave the exam at about the same time when he reached the ridge, and Lin realized that he was worried in vain. She ordered him to come back and decide to go somewhere. After that, they show us that there was a huge explosion. Lin sat by the window and watched the battle of the excellent hunter against the excellent monster. Now all hope is only on him and does not know if everything will really be alright. The next morning it was raining heavily, and Lin fell asleep by the window. Then he woke up from the lightning and saw a pile of fire. The alarm sounded again. Everyone immediately rushed to run away and did not know what to do. They only knew that they needed to find someone from the leaders. They also asked if anyone had contacted the association. They didn't have any backup plan at all. Lin asked the guy what was going on and they explained to him that everything was very bad and he needed to go to the conference room faster. The excellent hunter died and Lin was just in shock. People were shocked that even the excellent one could not cope. They had to sacrifice the excellent one, but the monster was still alive and believed that they needed to escape while there was still an opportunity. Then the girl replied that the monster was badly injured and in order to recover, he sent his creatures in their direction. Being hunters, their task is to protect this area. To which the guy shouted that they hadn't even been registered yet. He asked if they needed to go and die with the other hunters. He asked them to just let them out, because they don't want to die. The guys believe that they are not hunters yet, so they are the same as the residents of this area and that they still have a chance to escape. Immediately, Lin told them that they were all pathetic and the guy next to them got angry. He explained that not so long ago in the desert he encountered a flock of yin crows. Then a hellworm chased him, and on the ridge he was almost devoured by geese and an excellent monster controlled them all, so if they leave now, they will not be able to cope with such monsters. The other guy agreed. Even by air they would not be able to leave here, and even more so by land. He asked Yu since she has the highest rank here, how long can she last? She replied that all the monsters from the Golden Desert and the Goddess Ridge were heading in their direction, so she thinks she can hold out for a day. Lin replied that he could hold out for 3 hours and asked the guys. Climbing onto the stage, Lin said that even hunters with a gold rank are not sure that they can escape, and for them it is a direct road to death, and even if they sacrifice this place and escape, after the monsters deal with this place, they can go further to other settlements, where their relatives and friends can live. All the people thought about it and Lin added that life should be valued, but escape is definitely not the way out. They need to work together and fight back against the monsters to protect this area. He shouted that it was necessary to protect their families and protect this area and all the people supported him. And Bai Yang called them jerks who go to their own deaths. Lin saw Bai Yang leaving for the exit. Yu supported him and hugged him. She told everyone to follow the hunters from the association and help protect this area. If they unite, they will definitely be able to win. The guys agreed with her and said that no one forgot to take equipment, formed teams that fit their type and registered so that it would be easier for them to track everyone. Lin also wanted to leave, but Yu asked him to wait. Lin was surprised and she told him that her relic was capable of teleporting a maximum of 50 people. It will give him and all participants under 20 the opportunity to leave first. Lin was surprised, because a little earlier she said something else. But Yu admitted that she said it to calm people down, but soon this place will turn into hell. Lin was very surprised, and Yu added that her relics have a radius limit, so the nearest excellent hunters will be able to come here only after 48 hours. However, the monsters are moving at a much higher speed, so after 10 hours they will get to them. The Hunter Association has very little strength in this area, and they won't be able to protect it. She will die defending this area, but she will save everyone she can and will not allow such talented people to die here. But Lin answered her threateningly that he was staying, because his words were not only to calm people down, she was right. After the monsters crossed the ridge, they would not be able to hold the defense for a long time, but he could not just escape. He believed that they only needed to stall for time until the arrival of excellent hunters and then they would be able to kill the monster. He understood that with their powers, it was simply impossible. To which Lin replied that they have little chance, but they are not zero. There is still time to evacuate residents to the mountains, using the mountainous terrain. They would just need to stretch out 2 days before the arrival of the excellent ones. She knew about this place in the mountain gorge, which would fit a lot of people. You just need to find something to block the entrance. He took her and replied that it was just wonderful. He asked her to let them help her. He asked her not to worry, and promised that they would cope, and Yu asked him to be so arrogant. She did not understand if he was always so attractive and seemed to fall in love with him. She quickly began to leave and added that they would follow the plan. And they should hurry up, because it would not be so easy to evacuate 200,000 people, and Lin agreed with her. She understood that everything could work out thanks to him, and she hoped that they would all be able to survive this crisis. After that, they show us mountains and crowds of people. The girl said that they would need to protect people and doubted that it was safe. The guy assured her that there was nothing to be afraid of. Professional hunters were fighting ahead, so it was much safer here. Lin said that Jula was right. They just need to be alert and calmly walk to the right place. And Jula has a detection skill. And he can also create traps. Yu Guang can fight at long distances, and Wang Lin can provide support. But their team is very well balanced, so they will definitely cope. and the guy agreed with him, as well as others. They were walking forward, where there were corpses of many monsters. The guy thought that professional hunters were so strong. They didn't even give them a chance to show off. The bespectacled man shouted at him because the guy was unhappy that they didn't come across monsters. And the girl and Lin asked them not to swear. Lin said that the elder said that the excellent monster had accelerated, and the evacuation of so many people would definitely attract the attention of these creatures. Immediately, the protagonist saw something fly into the girl and he pushed her away. It turned out to be an axe that was sticking out of the ground. Huge minotaurs immediately appeared.